What's happening, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sunday night and another breakdown on AfterBuzz TV here of one of our favorite shows, possibly the best show on television right now, American Gods and Stars. Only 2 episodes left this season in Season 1. Episode 6, titled A Murder of Gods. We're going to break the whole thing down for you right now. I got a whole team and a random thumb in the shot. Let's do it, guys. I'll see you in a second.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Hello world is a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy.
Yeah. Hey.
Ooh, we're feeling good.
Oh boy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the panel, guys. You excited? You excited to talk American Gods?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. Let's get happy.
Let's get happy.
I was already happy.
This is the perfect tone for this show.
Yeah,
This is the
absolutely.
perfect tone.
Yes.
All right, guys. Welcome to the show. Welcome to AfterBuzz TV on Sunday night. We're talking... What's the show called again? American
boy.
Gods. Just kidding. We're talking American Gods here on Sunday nights. Episode 6 of Season 1, A Murder of Gods. A lot of stuff happened. It's starting to gel together. What we're going to see at the end of the season, this big event. We're getting closer and closer. There's some drama being laid down. It's good stuff. I think it's a good show. I like it. I'm excited to talk about it. I got a whole panel of beautiful people here to talk about it.
Oh, shut up.
I'm going to start on the far side. Kari Lane, welcome to the show.
Hello. Yes, I'm so excied to be here. As always. I mean, this show's awesome. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, oh, good. We get to talk about it.
Where can the fans find you if they want to tune in?
You guys can find me online at Kari D Lane. That's Karidlane. And we are live in the chat, so if you're watching this live, feel free to join us. And it's already popping.
We got Star Child next to Kari Lane.
Oh, yeah. My name's Dave Child. You can find me at MrDaveChild or DaveChild.com. I'm Dave Child.
All right, sweet.
I'm Joelle Monique. You can find me all over the internet at Joelle Monique every week at BlackGirlNerds.com and every Wednesday at Schmoes Know.
I was going to introduce Joelle, but Dave Child creeped me out.
We got caught
That's
up.
what I do, baby.
And you guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram if you want to get in on that. But we've also got the chat going right now, so you can throw your thoughts in. We'll share them. Oh, yeah. We'd love to talk about them. So, guys, what happened in this episode? A lot of things happened in this episode. I think I would like to start with the Mr. Wood monster coming out of Shadow Moon's stomach.
So gross.
It was a gross moment. Actually, you know what? We should probably start with
Mr. Wood? Did he say Mr.
Yeah,
Wood?
called him Mr. Wood.
That's what's
It
in.
is.
He's the old god of the trees.
That's what
But he switched sides
Mr.
and became
Wood.
something else.
Mr. Wood.
Well, we don't know
I
if
missed
he's
that part.
completely switched sides, per se.
We don't even know if that's a nickname used by Odin, but
He referred to him as Mr. Wood, yeah.
Yeah, but
I thought it was just okay. I guess I heard Mr. World when he said Mr. Wood.
You know what? You're not the only one. People are asking that in the chat. I heard Mr. Wood, and that was the theory people said on
We
the
had
last
the
video.
CC down
Yeah,
at the bottom,
and
and
that
it
too.
definitely said Mr. Wood.
yeah, Mr. Wood.
Okay, I think I was
Yeah.
probably writing another note down.
You know what?
So
Before we get to that, I skipped past it. We should talk about the cold open. I think that's
Yes.
where we should probably start.
We meet our first Jesus.
Yes.
we did, and he
Thank
gets
goodness.
he gets the bullet through the hand.
Yeah.
and he gets the crown across his forehead.
Right.
So this was like just of all of the episodes. This is again. Well, this is 5 for 6 now that we've had these dramatic cold opens that seem to be in a different time. The only one that didn't have it was the Laura Moon episode, which really artistically a very interesting choice by the showrunners to do that, to have 5 out of 6 have this very uniform format and just buck the trend for one episode in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
I like that because the Laura episode bucks every trend. Like, it's the first time they stray super far from the book. It's the first time that they focus on a character that Shadow's not the main kind of central focus for the story. And it feels like a standout episode, which is nice.
Yeah, and it was like a human episode.
Right.
And this was another Coming to America episode. And it's also the first, I think it's the first Coming to America episode that we see that doesn't involve a human sacrifice, where the sacrifice in this instant is actually Jesus' sacrifice.
I mean, this whole episode's thematically was sacrifice and resurrection, right? That's like the whole episode was just through and through, it was just weaving back and forth between the two concepts.
And that's been a running theme of the show. Sacrifice has been coming in every single episode. There's something about a sacrifice, and there's something every single time, and that's kind of what the gods are all about, is sacrificing and
what I found interesting is the Jesus-centered focus on all of our stories this week, from starting off with I presumed Mexican Jesus. We were having a conversation before the show started about whether we thought, is it Central American Jesus?
I was gonna say it's kind of central to South America Jesus, because a lot of people cross the Rio Grande from
Totally a fair.
different countries. You'll actually be surprised it's not just Mexican people crossing the Rio Grande, but it's an aside.
It's fine.
Yeah,
But-
I'm just super woke, is what I'm saying.
But from that to the total story tonal pivot on the guns, where it says "Kingdom Come."
I'm just gonna say that.
Which is freakish. It was a terrifying juxtaposition of you guys both believe in the exact same gods, and yet because of the way I guess your faith is centered or how you view yourself, they kind of had that monologue over about people looking at them, Lady Liberty, and seeing the face they want to see.
What did we think? I mean, who did we think the people killing these people were with the "Thy Kingdom Come" rifle? Was that?
Well, I think they kind of almost, you saw in that moment almost two gods. We don't literally see the gods, but we see a white Jesus, I think, on the other side, and we also see the god of guns, who we kind of meet later.
Later, right.
But it is kind of a sense of that they believe in Jesus, but they don't recognize another type of Jesus or another type of belief in front of them.
Well, Joel, I like how you said that too. We got Deborah in the chat says that cold open raises questions. The shooters had the rosaries. Does that mean American Jesus, which I specify of North American or white Jesus, is stronger than Mexican Jesus?
Well, at least in the land where Mexican Jesus comes about as they're praying and crossing, and it's a small group of people, whereas we know gods are territorial and how long they've been in a place provides different amounts of power. And I think that it's just saying that right here at what I presumed was Border Patrol. Ben was asking earlier, who do we think the other guys are? I presumed Border
I didn't think Border Patrol. I felt they're more
they're not. Yeah,
they're just locals who are having fun.
Militia. I think they're a local militia.
Okay, that's fair.
Because Border Control would just
they'd have more
arrest them.
Uniforms, and we didn't see them.
They also wouldn't shoot them. Border Control actually would arrest them, process them, and they deport them. This is kind of an extreme kind of militia that kind of found them.
Darius absolutely agrees with your statement of territory, of which territory that Jesus is in.
Absolutely.
Right.
Which is why I can't wait to see white Jesus. I've been waiting.
Because I
need it.
I think also we got to remember the Mr. Wednesday's speech about Jesus, and from what I remember of it is when he gets the white Jesus, he kind of rolls his eyes.
Oh,
He's kind of like, no one needs to help white Jesus. White Jesus kind of has a stick up his butt.
Well, and even so, there's a lot of need for white Jesus, and this is why there's such he's so populous here, and I'm really excited because these are new things that we get to develop, and as an avid book reader, it's thrilling.
In the book, Jesus was kind of passed over. It was kind of said as almost like a passing joke.
There is a chapter somewhere that Neil Gaiman wrote that didn't make it to the final cut of the book
about Jesus.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, I didn't want to include him. And I think in the Anansi Boys, that chapter shows up, or Jesus makes an appearance in the Anansi Boys. But yeah, no, you don't really get a sense of Jesus, which I think in today's climate and the ways they've had to update the book since 96, I think is when it came out. I think you can't overlook, and the same reason why I think they added Vulcan in here is these new kind of cultural shifts can't be overlooked.
Yeah, especially with immigration coming in, they really address that.
I think it's interesting.
In a really good way.
One of the comments that Wednesday makes later in the episode, he says, "Religion inspires in those that fear nothing, a fear of gods."
Yeah.
Which I like that quote. It played through the whole episode a bit. It really plays through the whole series, honestly. But there's a lot of discussion of belief, right? If you believe it to be true, it is true. And the power of gods being in basically the belief of the people. So then the power of fear coming in your belief in gods.
Yeah. Also, we should say in this opening, we do see the idea that gods can martyr themselves. And that's another, you get a sense that it's either sacrifice or martyrdom, which comes up later when Vulcan is talking to Wednesday about how that's something Wednesday could even do,
right,
if he wanted to, was martyr himself.
Well, and as our migrant Jesus is dying on the ground, he becomes more of the image of Jesus.
Oh yeah,
if you think about it, before,
I like the heart with the glow, and that's very Catholicism.
And the crown and through the hands, and you get this idea that even though he's dead, not just resurrection is around the corner, but that has helped instill him here.
Almost like the image of him on the ground with the heart. It was almost like an image on a candle.
Yeah. Yep.
Very commercialized, very much what you would buy in a store. All right, so let's move on to the next bit in the episode. But before we do, I should remind everybody, guys, please, if you will give us a rating or review on iTunes, it does help us stay high in the standings. We provide free content here at AfterBuzz TV. We always will provide free content, and if you help us do that, just go find us, give us a few stars, whatever you want to do, leave a quick comment. And then the last thing I want to talk to you guys about really quickly is that on History, for your consideration, we've got a brand new series that debuted this last year called Six. It's the story of SEAL Team 6. It is not a documentary or recreation. It's a dramatic series starring Walton Goggins. It's got producers involved and technical advisors that you would know from films like Zero Dark 30 and Lone Survivor, which, by the way, 2 films that are unbelievable that I'm a huge fan of. And if you talk about that authenticity of really telling these stories the right way with the right kind of heroes, very balanced stories, those are the people that tell them the best way. The technical advisor actually that worked on those films is U.S. Navy SEAL Mitchell Hall.
Wow.
Who's involved in this. So you can catch up on the entire thing right now on VOD, on History.com. It's being hailed by critics right now. Like Yahoo's calling it the most timely storytelling on TV. Los Angeles Times, it packs an action-packed focused punch. TV Guide, action-packed drama. Rave reviews. So go check that out right now. It's definitely a worthwhile thing to check out. So let's move into the rest of our show.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So let's talk about Mr. Wood, the tree monster.
Let's talk about Mr. Wood.
So the sequence starts out with a conversation between Wednesday and Shadow Moon. And at this point, Shadow's kind of he says, I'm questioning everything, you're questioning nothing. They're kind of just at this point where Shadow's just kind of like, all right, I don't know, I don't really know what I believe. And Wednesday,
Shadow has gone through the rabbit hole, and I like that what really got him was floating Marilyn Monroe. And then that's kind of how we start this episode with him being like, she was floating. Like, why is this not a thing that bothers you? And I always got the sense before that Shadow had some kind of faith. I knew that he wasn't fully believing in all of the stories Wednesday was spinning. But I think this scene really helped establish how far off base he's been. And I like that it takes the removal of a foreign object for him to be like, okay, so things could really be happening. I'm not like crazy. I'm not losing my mind. This is reality.
Also, his dead wife coming back, I think, kind of also helped him go like, oh, something's real weird is happening.
I think that's the thing that actually shakes him up the most. It's not necessarily the gods, because he's not quite picking up on that, but it's more like, and not even with his wife, it's not even like that she's back from the dead, so that you cheated on me thing. And so he's like, I think his brain is just not processing.
Well, I think... Okay, so his reality that he's experiencing in this show, I think is the same reality that as viewers we're experiencing, which is he doesn't really know if any moment he's in is really happening, if he's seeing something that isn't there, if the person's dead, if they're alive, if they're a god, if it's something that he's familiar with. As an audience member, that's kind of how I feel watching this a lot of the time, which is, am I watching, is this a hallucination? Is this another world? Is this another universe? Is this a flashback? There's very few moments where it's like, this is basic linear storytelling. I'm going from point A to point B. An act of war is, followed up with revenge, right? Like, these sort of things, like, classic tropes in storytelling, they happen here, but they're strangely placed. They're all over the place. They weave in and out. So I think that's what Shadow's going through. I think he can't tell what to believe.
I guess that's true.
Sure.
There is a sense of like everything that happens like A, B to C. There's not a lot of flashbacks, but there is moments where you don't know, where he looks up at a tree and then he sees a noose there,
right?
And he's not sure if he's actually seeing a noose or if it's just in his head.
Right.
And I think there is a sense of that. And that's something that was always in the books, where you see like a duality and kind of a double of different stuff.
I'm curious, from both the chat and everybody here at the table, is Shadow a reliable? Are you guys following him along? Do you guys think these are delusions, or is it something else?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, what we see at the end of the episode, and I think we'll just stick with Shadow on Wednesday. We'll cover their whole arc right now, and then we'll move to the others. But what we see at the end of the episode, where he's able to visualize what Laura Moon's going through, he's able to close his eyes and actually track
see her, yeah.
See her. So now we're getting a very clear sense, multiple episodes, that Shadow has these premonitions, and he's able to tap into something else. He has a power. He is some sort of god, or something else is going. He's not just strictly a human.
I don't know about that, because
really?
I feel like that's almost tied to the coin. Because when he does see her, you see his eye glows, much like the way that she sees Shadow Moon walking around. So I feel like that particular power, I think, is because of his connection to the coin.
Could be.
And whatever connection he made to the coin and then gave to Laura. I got that sense. But yeah, I think there's a sense of like magical abilities are happening.
So my sense of reliability is that he's the. Oh yeah.
Here you go. Amy in the chat says, I think the more Shadow believes, the more reliable he is as a narrator.
100%. That's exactly what I was just going to get to, was that it goes back again to Wednesday's quote, which he said to Shadow and multiple characters all throughout. It's that same quote about fear. It's like the whole concept of gods in the story, it's all based on this idea that the more anyone believes in anything, the more powerful they get, right?
Right.
I mean, faith, that's what it is anyway.
Lewis, though, says Shadow's disbelief is getting tiresome.
Well, but it's also fading. It's like it's hardly there anymore. He's just trying to figure out the rules. I think he understands that, like when Laura comes back in the last episode, he says, I don't even, I've seen weirder stuff than people coming back from the dead. Now I'm just wondering why you cheated on me. Like, he was able to focus on that. So he's just kind of trying to figure out what the rules are and why these are happening. And I don't think it's very clear to him yet that these are gods that they're talking about.
No.
I think from his perspective.
I like this one too. Deborah says, I think his mind is switching between realities. So that's a thought too. Of
that's
like,
true.
He literally is being able to see regular reality and like what the gods see.
So let's talk about this Mr. Wood scene where Wednesday takes this thing out of
The tree parasite.
Yeah, this is the first time we've had a moment between Shadow and Wednesday where Wednesday has clearly shown him, hey, I have like basically a power. I'm a powerful being. I'm going to show you because you're my man and I kind of need to save you. I need to make sure you're okay because you're important to me. And watch, I'm going to do something pretty otherworldly. I'm not just going to like come up with an elaborate scheme to rob a bank or escape a building, but I'm going to like take something out of you. You know, it was the Matrix moment. It was like the out of the stomach thing.
Totally.
He did make it snow earlier, though, so it is kind of a.
Did he make it snow,
Yeah,
or
I
did
think
Wednesday?
Shadow
Or did
made
Shadow
it.
make it snow? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
well,
did
I kinda-
Odin make it snow because Shadow
through
believed?
Shadow is what I always got.
He
the
needed
sense of.
his energy.
Is Shadow some sort of conduit for Wednesday? Is that why he's so important?
Well, as they've said before, that the humans are the conduits essentially for the gods in a way, because it's like their belief gives power, and that's why Wednesday kept being like, think of snow, believe in it, you know,
I mean,
kind of
did they
idea.
even say at the top of, I cannot remember if this is from an episode or a promo now, but they were talking about how like gods are powerful, but human beings are more powerful.
They do say that
Because
in the previous episode.
because they believe so strongly, and once they stop believing, then they don't do so good. So I think having somebody like Shadow, I think Shadow is definitely special and separate and apart from like a regular human being. But if you can get Shadow to believe, this guy who's kind of doesn't believe in anything and is just walking around not actively engaging in life at all, then maybe you can get other people to believe too and become more powerful by proxy.
Is Shadow a human, or is Shadow like Robin Williams in Hook, where he's a human until he believes enough to become Peter Pan?
Well, I think maybe
I feel that's going to get spoiler
that's
if
spoiler
we think
territory,
about it. Yeah.
so we should back off from that.
Okay, fair enough.
But also, I kind of forgot my point. Continue.
The Mr. Wood was so nice to actually have that moment where Odin's like, oh, you are in trouble, I need to help.
Right.
And it was nice that he actually did something, but it wasn't like, look at my power and ability. And he's like distracting him. It was actually like really sweet too, how he was like, like, hey, don't
Sorry
think
about
about
my
it,
cold.
don't
He's
look
got
at
a
it.
good bedside manner. That's
Yes.
for sure. He's like, I'm sorry about my cold hands, but we're just gonna do this. And he's explaining the process
Don't
of like
look.
just a little bit of electricity here,
Right.
get the worms to rise out. I also like the way they used it to take the time to give us like some backstory, like the way
Oh,
they.
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, the way they tell stories in order to inform us on this story, it could become super redundant and flat. As we're watching, we also supposed to have to listen.
Yeah.
But the way they craft these stories, they become so visceral and kind of exciting to listen to. And Mr. Wood is cool. It's the first god, the second time. I know we've talked about a god switching teams before, but I don't know if it was Mr. Wood or somebody else.
I think this is he was the first old god that we see who switched teams.
Yeah, so
they talk about him and they say that he was one way, but he saw basically the impending world was going to destroy him. So he sacrificed and became something else, and he switched over.
Industrial Revolution, when
Yep.
people were
Yeah.
using less trees.
Right.
I got to switch it up so I can stay relevant.
And I do like that there's always a god-sized hole in human's heart, and the first thing to fill it up are trees.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
So what would have happened, again, away from spoilers, something we should point out, guys, is halfway through the episode, but the reason we didn't go into spoilers is because some of of the people on the panel have read the book, so we kind of saved that for the end. If there's any spoiler talk, we stay vague about it during the episode, and we'll address it at the end after predictions, just in case you're wondering. But so that wood, that piece of wood, that living sort of thing that gets taken out of Shadow, what the hell was that? Was it a seed that is growing inside him? Was it because and then he even asks him, "Am I going to be okay?" And he says, "For the purpose of right now, sure." He kisses him. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I got a sense that was
got
basically
it out.
that was the god kind of becoming a parasite and about to kill Shadow, and he saved Shadow's life because of that. But I also think you don't know if there's a splinter still in there or something. You don't know if there's a little bit of Mr. Wood left in him. Yeah. So that's why it's kind of, for now, let's say yes. Yeah.
So, okay, so that scene happens. We end up with the second half of the Shadow Wednesday arc is that they go to Vulcan, Virginia.
I also like before we move on too quickly, I also like how he talks about his dead wife and Laura, and I like how Mr. Wednesday is quickly comes up with a narrative to explain why she came back and why she's not there right now, to quickly drive away to stop her from running up.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, she came back just to let you go. Bye. Let's head out.
He's clearly
get out of there.
He's clearly scared of Laura in some way. And one thing that I actually have liked, and this episode showed it, was that the relationship between Shadow and Wednesday is an important one, obviously. But beyond even that, Wednesday's like lack of infinite power, his kind of vulnerability in some ways, the fact that he is weak enough to be scared of other things, and that he kind of needs Shadow, and they're becoming this team, is a satisfying part of the show to watch. It grounds it in something familiar, which is like two very likable characters on a journey, on a trip together, and they need each other, and they're a team. And he's not just manipulating Shadow. It feels like he does in some way care for Shadow. We saw that tonight. I thought it was a very important part of the story.
And Shadow is in between two faiths right now, and the two faiths are Laura, which was the only thing he believed in, and now Mr. Wednesday, who's kind of attached himself to him. So that's kind of where he is. So
well, it's interesting how quickly Wednesday wants to get
her
Laura out of there. I like how Ren in the chat said, didn't like that Wednesday ditched Laura. Imagine him, Shadow, and Laura driving across the country like in Preacher Season 2.
I can't wait for Preacher Season 2.
Preacher Season 2.
haven't seen Preacher, so I wouldn't know, but I like the idea of them all together.
Well, there's 2 more weeks of this show. This show ends, I think, on the 18th.
And then we're jumping on to Preacher.
I think you and I start Preacher the next Sunday.
Yeah.
So excited about that. So, all right. Anyway, continuing to move on to the second half of the episode, where we get to go meet Mr. Vulcan. The god, I guess,
of the Forge.
The god of the Forge, god of weapons,
That's
god of firepower, or something. God of the Forge.
He's the Greek god of the Forge and fire.
Yeah.
So he's kind of, that's why he's able to become the god of weapons, because he started off as the Forge, which is how he makes swords. So it's not a big leap from swords to guns.
This just made me want to make a sword. That just made me want to own a sweet blade that looked so cool. Odin got such a sick sword in this scene, right?
Now the question is he taking his sword to like a gunfight or other weapons? And I'm like, yes, it's a good weapon, but what does everybody else have as well?
I mean, interesting question, but also the sword is like the size of a person.
It is a very big sword.
And if wielded, by the right god, I think it could be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and it's made by a god too.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm looking forward to. So you know how when you watch a movie like Gladiator, literally any one of the epic movies where there's like a sweet commander with a big ass sword, you're always watching the battle scene and you're like, all right, we all know that if every one of the guys on the other team just rushed the hero, they'd kill the hero immediately because he's got a sword. There's no way he's going to fend off like 17 guys. But he always manages, in the context of the scenes you're watching, to kill like 19 guys and then be triumphant with this big ass sword. I'm just imagining Odin with his huge sword having that moment in the god fight where you're like, that guy can just move trees. You're just dead if he tries to kill you. But it's like the Avengers, It's like Hawkeye has to be able to fight. Anyway, that was my tangent. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
His sword was super sick, was the point.
Yeah.
This was really
Nobody
cool.
else is on my level.
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm with you. I just know it's like, we're the two white guys on the panel. We love swords. We just like, guys love swords.
It's a cool sword. My roommate has
swords.
literally a life-size replica that he bought from Italy of the Braveheart sword hanging on his wall, sharpened. It's terrifying.
Yep.
It's huge.
I got a sword at home too. We're geeky guys that love swords. It's a thing.
So anyway, they meet Vulcan. Guns fire in the air. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Side note too, and kind of a question with the sword of. Now the question is, can only a god kill a god? Can the sword be the thing that kills a god, or? Could a human have that sword and kill a god, or does a god have to kill a god?
I think humans can kill gods.
I also have a question of whether a god can really die unless it's forgotten.
That too.
Like a god will remanifest.
Like how he's in
some
the
other
fire and like, you know, his body is gone, but he could come back.
I mean, they said
Form,
Mr.
right?
Wednesday has martyred himself before.
Yes.
And so
Right.
it seems like it shouldn't be such a. I mean, Jesus came back. It's
Yeah.
just a lot of like gods that return back to Earth from for different reasons. So I would agree with
Yeah,
you.
that's kind of some of the traits of a lot of gods is to die and come back.
Can we ask the question, and just aside from bringing it up, because there has been, like, obviously the discussion of racism, and that's a hot button issue in this show. It comes up a lot. But again, the noose is referenced here. What is the deal with consistently bringing up the noose with Shadow? Is it just because he's a black man? Is it just supposed to be like a terrifying symbolism? Am I missing something? Is that a part of the plot that just...
Someone brought up in the chat, and then I had forgotten about it. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Odin was also lynched in a way of like hung from a noose. So someone was pointed out that maybe it wasn't necessarily meant for Shadow, it's for Odin.
When was
Yeah,
Odin lynched?
hang in the myth.
In mythology.
Oh, in mythology, gotcha.
Yeah.
Hangs from the world tree,
Yeah.
which is the world tree is a reoccurring symbol in mythology. It's even like talked about in the Thor movies.
And it's brought in the Vikings TV show. They cover that with Odin and
Got it.
hanging from a tree. So there's that.
But
And
yeah.
then depending on Shadow's connection to Odin, that might be part of it as well.
also, I think there's just the general racial sense of like
Totally,
of America and
Sure.
lynching and hanging.
That's the part of it that I've picked up on, and that's what I mean, is I think there are enough things in this show that reference just problematic issues in America. Like, obviously, everything he says. There's the quote that when he's talking about every bullet fired in a crowded movie theater. I mean, there are lines like that in this show that are
was
like...
brutal.
Where you're just like, whoa, that is intense. But, like, obviously they're trying to be provocative. That's what the show is trying to do. It's making you think about things that are important. And I think that that's, to me, when I see that noose, that's what they're getting at. But I was wondering if it's deeper in the story that I should be paying beyond just the important social conversation.
I think probably the Odin reference is pretty on track.
A few people are like, it's not about Shadow.
Yeah, but as far as it relates to, like, I think grand scheme, not about Shadow. I think as far as the lynchings pertain to Shadow and his experience with them, I think it's an easy way to jab at him at this point in time. Like, because not only is it a horrifying experience in and of itself, but on top of that, you have the racial, like, prerogative pushing behind it, and it's kind of scary, especially meeting Vulcan, who is essentially a white supremacist god.
Dude, driving into that town, I'm like, Shadow, stay in the car.
Right.
Don't go outside. I don't see any other color but white people in that
We
town.
didn't even see the bullets as they fell from the sky threatening anyone else.
No,
like
not
they
at
shot up in the air and they
Yeah.
felt fine, and then they kind of walked
and the
away.
car was further away and didn't fall where the...
but it was like almost targeting Shadow.
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I even noticed as they were driving up to the town, did you notice that in the background all the smokestacks looked kind of fake? They looked like they were almost cartoonish. I thought
Right.
that was probably intentional. Like, this is a very old town, and it's old America, and it's a little bit cartoonish.
I mentioned that it felt like taking a hyper real America and overlaying like a cartoon version of reality. Like, if you've seen factories before, you know they don't look quite like that, but it's more of a symbolic factory.
Definitely.
I was going to say, technically, Bruce pointed out in the chat, Odin committed suicide, Shadow was getting lynched. So there is a distinction, too, of...
Yes. I mean, the last Shadow point, obviously, is that the pilot of the show, he is attempted to be lynched in the pilot. So probably that symbolism will continue throughout the show because it's going to relate back. It's a callback to the first episode.
Yeah.
There's also the reoccurring theme of sacrifice.
Right.
That's also. And we should also note that when they drive in and they have the funeral patches, they look so much like
it was
Nazi
creepy.
hands. that
Yes.
it became really creepy.
So let's finish this segment because there's a lot to talk about still. So in the end, after getting this sweet sword, Odin cuts off Vulcan's head and
Yes.
kicks him and pisses on him.
Right.
And
pisses and says curses the whole vat, it seems.
so the bullets that have been made now, in theory, have some kind of curse in them.
Right, well, we know that he's marketed through media and these new gods, and so we don't know what their plan is for it, but they may not know that he cursed them, because why? I mean, we've seen the eye in the sky and somebody's always watching them, but why watch your own plant? So there's a potential and possibility that they won't know that it's cursed. I also found it interesting that what got him killed was breaking a deal, and it brought me back to that thought of, like, if you believe it, it can happen.
Right.
Because we said it must be very challenging to kill a god, but breaking a pact in a lot of religious cultures, figures, kinds of things, it's the worst thing you can do is to break a promise. So I'm curious if he was able to die because he broke his promise, or if Wednesday just has that power, if he can just, because he has the sword, he was able to do it.
Right. It's interesting because they made him a somewhat sympathetic character in that sense, that he did get on the side of our hero a little bit. I mean, our hero being Odin, I guess, sort of. And that's what killed him. But at the same time, as you're saying, he's basically a white supremacist god, which makes him like the ultimate evil god.
Yeah, I didn't feel bad for that guy at all.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not quite a white supremacist god. I think he's just latching into the he has that white supremacist feel to him.
He has the audience.
He's just a Greek god, so he is
Well, no,
sounding
he's not
like
Greek
a white
anymore.
supremacist.
He's American god, and he's found a culture that will support him.
Yes.
It is supreme, like,
And it is
focused on a white supremacist like base value.
Yeah, right.
Okay, cool.
So moving into the other half of the episode, we have this road trip with Laura Moon, with Ginger Minge, and with Salim Not Salim. And that's a character that we hadn't seen show up for a couple episodes
I was
now.
so surprised to see him.
Yeah, me
Me
too.
too.
He felt like a standalone character to me a little bit.
Salim?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's and I think it's not a spoiler to say that in the book, that's really that whole love scene between the Jinn and Salim that happens in the book, but that's kind of a one-off. It's kind of a nice moment to build the world.
It's a coming to America story. It's not part of the grander Wednesday story that you see, and it's shocking, but it's also really dope. For a long time, I was unsure of how they were going to start spinning off of the book. The book has a lot of flowery language, but it's a pretty direct story. I love how they're building these outside characters. Like, I love that Salim comes back, particularly because when he got into the cab at the end of his story, I wasn't sure if what we were seeing is a Jinn who's taken over someone's body, or if it was Salim now with a new kind of power.
I thought Salim had maybe got transferred powers and became a Jinn as well, or something like that, too. I kind of wondered. I'm like, well, or he just got the gift of a new opportunity in life, which we seem to be okay with, in a way.
Yeah, I also like this team that we have that are kind of a nice like B-story team, because they have similar goals in a lot of ways, because Laura wants Shadow, Salim wants the Jinn, and Matt Sweeney wants his coin back. So they each have this. You have two people that are looking for love, or their ideal of love, and then you have Matt Sweeney, who just wants a very monetary, but also like his power, his coin back and his luck back. So they all they each have a drive that they're all thriving for, and it's a good team because of that.
Who wasn't surprised it was Salim's car? I was like, that's a taxi.
I was still surprised because I didn't expect, because we as book readers, I just didn't expect to see him again.
I thought that was it for his story. I was like, oh crap, he's back.
I thought it was so weird to see a taxi.
I didn't go there either. And from the context of just being a longtime TV watcher, it felt like a standalone moment when we watched it in the show.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's a really great way to continue that story. Is like, okay, so this person has come in and completely turned your world upside down and then vanished the next day. I love that he's like, I'm just traveling toward Mecca. I'm just gonna find this Jinn again and get that feeling back. Which is kind of what everyone's looking to get that feeling back, as you were mentioning earlier. I love Mad Sweeney and Laura together. I think they're like the worst people on this show, and they bring the creators mentioned last week that they bring out the worst in each other, and seeing them go at it all the time, whether it's physically or just verbally, or even just like for control within the car, it's like viscerally exciting.
It's fun, and it makes you wonder, as they kind of build the relationship there, where does that relationship go? Because even like there's a flirting aspect to some of it.
A little bit. I thought so.
Are you guys shipping them? Is that what you're saying?
I ship them hard as hell because I don't think anyone else deserves either of them.
They even threw in some sex talk. The line when Matt Sweeney says, "Why do?"
And she jumps on that. She's like, "Oh no, I like it." She didn't have to offer.
You're not going to shame me.
I wrote it down. He says, "Why do men like anal sex? Is it because women don't?" And she ends up by saying, "I actually like anal sex." Cut.
Hilarious.
You're like, all right. So
I kind of wanted to see his facial reaction to that. Actually,
they didn't show us the reaction. Good point.
I wanted to see it, and then later we were talking about this of when she's like on the side of the road and Salim's doing his prayer. I felt Matt Sweeney was giving her oogly eyes a little bit.
I didn't catch the oogly eyes, but I did hear
He's
you say
looking over at her, but he didn't have like a pissed off face or I hate you face or anything, but he just was watching her.
Yeah.
And that just felt like, all right, dude, what are you doing?
I suppose he is kind of negging her hard with how bad she smells.
Yeah, he
So,
really is. Yeah, it's like getting an Indian burn on the schoolyard, so you can get a date when you're 8.
Pulling her pigtails.
Yeah.
There you go, pulling her pigtails.
Yeah.
I got Indian burns. I don't know. I guess your pigtails got pulled.
Yeah. All the time.
So that scene, though, Salim is praying, which I actually appreciated that they did that. That's how that scene goes. That he's just sort of like, I'm gonna pull over and do this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. You're in my car, and I was
Yeah.
going to do this, and I do. I got the sense I do this every day. You guys do you, because I'm doing me right now.
Yeah, and it's nice to have someone of faith in this story.
He's a good-natured character. I like his character.
Yeah.
Renji goes, part of me thought that they were going to have angry sex, referring to Laura and Aleppo.
Yeah.
That might
Right?
happen.
I feel that
Wouldn't
could
he
happen.
like tear her arm off though? I feel like the idea he's such like a huge
I feel like
dude.
she might tear his arm off.
I guess she's like super strong. It's
Depends
true.
how rough they go at it.
I just keep imagining her arm just falling off at some point.
Well, no, they screwed
But
it
they
in.
put pins.
They put pins.
So we need to talk actually a little bit about this concept of resurrection, because he says to her, basically, I get my coin back when you get resurrected. And I know a guy who knows a guy. So your guy knows a guy. So I'm assuming he means that that Wednesday has some ability to resurrect Laura.
I didn't get that. I
I
got
didn't
that
think
it
he
was.
meant him.
He definitely name dropped Jesus, and it seems like we're heading in a Jesus-y sort of direction potentially, which is super
Jesus could
exciting.
resurrect her.
I really want to see them beg white Jesus to resurrect her. It's so good.
It could be
That could
one
work.
of the many Jesuses.
Right?
It could be. quite a
Wait,
few.
someone said it earlier. They wanted a room full of the Jesuses. That
Yes.
would be so fun to
I
have
need to see
all the different ones
Jesuses
together.
meet.
I bet they do not get along.
Is this
That's
gonna
my
be-
No.
guess.
Is this going to be like the Anchorman fight, but every team's going to have a Jesus?
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah. I'm curious about why. Maybe you can clear this up. Why did they go back to? Why did she change course and go back to the Croc Bar?
Yeah.
I didn't think she
Why?
was going to the croc bar. I think she wanted to. She talked about like she had this whole, excuse my language, she's fuck all those assholes was that long running thing between them, and I think a lot of what Laura says is to convince herself. I think she's still feeling. We get a flashback to her in the jacuzzi. She's still depressed.
Yep.
And she's alive, but I think she kind of wants to die again. Like Shadow left. And now she's like on the road, and so I think for a second she wanted to revisit her family and just kind of get a sense of her place in the world
Right.
again. And as soon as she saw them, and was like, I don't fit in this picture anymore.
Well, she maybe needed that visual to like confirm that, because she's thinking it. It's a little bit like whatever. No, something I was gonna add too. That I'm like, that's a good point as well. Timmy and Bruce in the chat said it's also nice to have a nice Muslim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Currently,
I
especially
agree.
with current events, and I'm like, yeah, he's a great, and like their little exchange too of like life is great.
I think
And
he's
just,
the
God is great.
nicest.
Life is great.
It's
so
nice
good.
that the nicest person and like the most kind-hearted is a gay Muslim.
Yes.
That's
I
kind of
totally
great.
agree.
Yes.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think you're right though, Joelle, about them going back to her old town and she's looking around. Because without the belief that she can get Shadow back, so she's losing her belief now. Her
Yeah.
strength, I think, in some ways, her strength was coming from her belief. Because by the end of this episode, she even started to look more dead. She's starting to look more dead. She's losing that belief and faith that she had that she could get what she wanted.
Well, I also think her belief and faith is now tied up totally in Shadow Moon, and I think the reason why she agreed to go this resurrection route is because she was starting to realize she was rotting, like actually physically rotting.
Coming to terms with that.
So
Yeah.
if she's gonna, I think that's why they have the discussion about like, did you kiss him and did he
Yeah.
feel the kiss and everything. That's why she kind of had a change of heart there to kind of be okay. I should get resurrected if I'm ever gonna get my guy back.
That makes sense.
Because he's not gonna want like a dying chick.
Yep.
So,
Well, even like the taste, he said, like when you kissed him, like you probably tasted horrible.
Right.
right,
Do you,
which
do you guys find it at all bizarre that like we got like these really, really intense graphic Bilquis sex scenes in the first few episodes, but they've done nothing with her character for like multiple episodes? So looking back on it, you're just like, you just introduced with this like really intense scene, and then gave us basically another really intense scene, and then she's just like a non-character for like most of the rest of the season.
I feel like
she's coming back. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
one, I feel like Bilquis is a really grand visual representation of what the gods are trying to do. Of like, we will lure someone to worship us in any way that we possibly can, so that we can exist a little while longer. We get her in that nice museum scene where she's revisiting like her old kind of grand days, and I think they're probably using her as like a framing device. If we get like these, like how are they surviving now, and then maybe. I don't know where we'll go toward the end of the season with the gods and their next big move.
It's also setting the tone, and it was the first big, like, modern day god thing. So it was, I think it was very needed early on in the episodes.
Agree.
Because of that.
What else happened? Anything else that we're forgetting in the second Laura Moon?
Well, they're kind of on their way.
They're on their way to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So, and he says, I'll get you to Wisconsin. I'll show you Wisconsin. I'll show you a whole murder of gods. I'll show you your djinn and everything you want to see. So we are building more and more and more towards
No, he says
this.
he told them where they'll be once they get there.
Yes.
I think it's interesting as we get more into the nature gods, the god of woods or trees or whatever, and we get Selim praying at the end as he's facing the sunrise. I like how they're using nature as kind of, again, another framing device of how people connect not just to their faith but to like the physical realm. I'll be interested to see what other gods they decide to bring in and how they play into that.
I'm surprised because I thought, well, I guess we can save this for like predictions,
which we're about to get to anyway.
Okay.
So
I do want to talk about one thing I like is the title of this, A Murder of Gods.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a spin-off of Murder of Crows.
Yeah.
Which is how you usually describe a bunch of different crows and like a herd of crows. So this is kind of, is it describing a bunch of gods? Is a murder of gods? While at the same time they're talking about martyrs, and you see a god get murdered, so it has a nice little several different meanings.
Mads, when he says the line, "I'll show you a murder of gods,"
right
in the episode, he actually references that. When
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, he says, "I'll show you a whole murder of gods."
Right. So he referred to them as a group.
A murder of crows is like a horror term. It's usually used in like gothic horror.
Well, it's also how you.
It's also you try to describe like a group of crows.
Yeah. Crazy fun prediction. I like this. Renji goes, maybe the new gods will rebrand Belquist as the making her the goddess of porn.
Yeah, she could.
Yeah,
she could become the
new
goddess
modern
of porn.
Sex
Worship. That's also another thing that I liked about this episode was we got to see how you take an old god and turn him into like a new god.
How they evolve.
Yeah, especially with Vulcan, that tends to happen.
That was important.
It really does.
Vulcan was so dope, like awful person, terrible god, but like the building up, because again. Since we're in predictions, are we in
Let's get into
mild book
predictions.
spoilers?
Predictions.
Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the book, if you're going to do prediction lights. We're going to talk a little bit about the book in this section.
AfterBuzz TV.
We're going to talk a little bit about the book. So, like, if you are just a TV watcher and you don't want to hear anything about book stuff, maybe turn off now.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Thanks for tuning in.
But if you do want to know where to find any one of us, if you want to get at us before we do our predictions, why don't we do a sign-off and then predictions, just so anybody who doesn't want to hear can actually get us. Carrie, where can the folks find you?
Yes, you can find me online at Kari Lane, Karidlane. And quick shout-out to Paper Ronnie. They have really cool scarves and cool clothes stuff.
And you can find me at mrdavechild or davechild.com. And quick shout-out to Dave Child. My name's Dave Child.
Hey guys, I'm Joelle Monique. You can find me all over the internet at Joelle Monique, every week at blackgirlnerds.com, and every Wednesday at Schmoes Know. I have an interview with Mark Bernardin, the best, on Black Girl Nerds. You can check out the podcast out now on iTunes.
And you guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter or Instagram, and every single Wednesday here talking about action movies on Action Movie Anatomy at 12:30. Have a great time doing that. Thanks for watching and listening. We're going to get into predictions right now. So once again, spoiler alert, do not listen or watch if you want to know nothing about the book. We're going to talk for a minute or two about it. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. All right.
Vulcan is not in the book, guys. He just is not there, period. This is a whole character created entirely for the show, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good choice.
I love the way they built him up. I love, like, the idea of him prospering off of a town that has, like, a small town that has really strong beliefs. Creating a god in and of itself is interesting. The way they explore, like, American ideals with American reality was really fascinating during this scene. And I also like the way, like, he even just describes his weapon. Like, at one time he calls a gun like a volcano in their hands. Like, that is fascinating. And the idea that gun death could be seen as sacrificial is really enticing to me. It's like super meaty. The one thing that's disappointed in is like we have a lot of gun deaths in America, like a ton of gun deaths. Wouldn't that gotta be like supreme?
Yeah, that's why I don't think he's dead. That's why I think that's like it's a temporary death.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna come back because he's, especially if he's linked to guns. It also makes me. What's a little confusing is he the god of just that community that he's built around himself, just that small town, or is he the
says
god
it's
of
every
all guns?
time the shooting happens, he gets it. So I think his base of worship is there, but I still think he can. Oh, it's where all those bullets go out to.
Yeah, I think what the guns and bullets he makes.
Sure.
So it's not every single
Because
gun,
that's why
bullet.
why the cursing of the bullets. Any other quick last predictions before we wrap here, Kari? Anything else?
I'd be curious. Yeah, I want to see how Bilquis comes back because it's not done. And then I started reading the book a little bit, and I already know kind of where some stuff's going. So I'm curious how they will end, like where they're gonna like. I don't think. I'm curious if it's going to end at the gathering or we won't even get to it.
They said, Neil Gaiman has said that the gathering on the Rock is not going to happen until the very final season. It's not going to happen on this season.
Oh, see, then that's interesting.
So this is their. I'm curious to see how they kind of slow things down. I love what they're doing also with Matt Sweeney and that whole group where they're actually making them into characters. I hope, because even Matt Sweeney in the books is just kind of a...
He has a shorter timeline.
Yeah, he's a shorter timeline, but he just kind of shows up and steals the show a little bit. Anansi does the same thing, so I'm hoping we get like Anansi in on the regular cast. Would be nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Wisconsin and seeing an actual murder of gods together in a room. That's a lot of personality to try to fit in any kind of space, and I'm looking forward to the Outlash backtalk making a plan stage.
I'm just looking forward to Wednesday using his huge sword. Thanks for listening and watching, guys. It's been a good episode and a lot of fun chat. We'll be here same time, same place next week. And be sure to follow us on Twitter. Check back next week and listen because we may have a different tape time for the finale. We're not 100% on it. We may be a couple hours earlier. We're going to let you guys know as soon as we possibly can. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Mr. Wood and huge swords.
Oh, God.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.